A big development at the Supreme Court, how it affects the Little Sisters of the Poor and other faith groups. Religious freedom, a new congressional proposal to help people here and abroad. Medal of Valor, safety officers honored for their heroism. And responding to criticism, Notre Dame awards Vice President Joe Biden its highest honor. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Monday, May 16th, 2016. Good evening from Washington. Thanks for joining us this evening. I'm Brian Patrick. Some see this as a win for religious liberty. The Supreme Court today sends the Little Sisters of the Poor case back to the lower courts. The justices decide not to rule on the legal challenge to the Obamacare contraception mandate. Wyatt Goolsby reports from the High Court tonight. Wyatt?
Brian, the Supreme Court is not weighing in on the merits of the case. Instead, they want the lower courts to help the Little Sisters of the Poor and the Obama administration work out a compromise.
Today's decision does not resolve a long-standing dispute between faith-based groups and the Obama administration's birth control mandate, but the High Court's decision means the Little Sisters will not face fines for refusing to sign a form triggering contraceptive coverage in their health care plan, a move they say would violate their faith. Lawyers representing the Little Sisters are calling the decision a game changer. The Becket Fund for Religious Liberty says, quote, "The court has accepted the government's concession that it can get drugs to people without using the Little Sisters. The court has forbidden the government from fining the Little Sisters, even though they are refusing to bow to the government's will." Carrie Severino with the Judicial Crisis Network agrees that it's a big win for the parties involved.
It's really wonderful news for the Little Sisters. They can move forward, they can provide the services that they're doing to the poor and elderly. You know, the Priests for Life can continue doing their great work.
Severino says the unsigned unanimous opinion could help other Catholic and Protestant colleges, charities, and advocacy groups still fighting the mandate in separate lower court cases.
It's not a decision that makes new law exactly. So that I think if you had, say, Justice Scalia still in the court, you would have had a decision saying, no, this violates the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. You didn't get that. And so it's a little harder to apply it to other cases, but I think given what the government has conceded in this case, I don't think they'll be able to go back to other groups like EWTN and say, oh no, for you guys, you know, just the raise your hand isn't going to be enough.
Contraception must be provided at no extra charge under the health care law. Now, religious institutions and houses of worship are exempt. Other faith-based groups must voice their objections with either their insurer or the government and allow a third party provide the birth control. And that's the problem. The Little Sisters of the Poor say that still violates their conscience. Brian?
EWTN, thank you. Wyatt Goolsby. EWTN Chairman and CEO Michael Warsaw, calling it a clear victory, says today's ruling by the Supreme Court strikes down several of the key decisions upon which the 11th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals based its previous ruling against EWTN. The Obama administration says it is pleased with the ruling. It claims millions of women can continue to have access to free birth control and abortion-inducing drugs. Chief White House correspondent and political director Lauren Ashburn questioned the claim. Lauren?
Brian, the White House has a different spin on today's ruling. White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest sees the decision by the Supreme Court to send the case back to the lower court as a win for women everywhere.
And there isn't really precedent for the Supreme Court to do such a thing. So how can you say that you're gratified by the ruling?
The conclusion, the announcement from the Supreme Court today ensures that millions of American women all across the country will continue to enjoy the health care coverage that they've sought. And we're pleased about that because we care about making sure that women have access to the health care that they want.
Women's groups are saying that now they have to wait, so the decision isn't really final.
I acknowledge that, but while we're waiting, millions of American women all across the country will continue to enjoy the access to the health care that they and their doctors determine that they need.
I also questioned him on whether or not there is a negative trend emerging on Obamacare. Last week, a federal judge declared the Obama administration was unconstitutionally spending money to subsidize health care. The White House press secretary answered saying Republicans are always saying each case will be the legal death blow, and he is confident that they will be wrong again. Brian.
Thank you, Lauren Ashburn at the White House. Here in the studio, James Capretta is with us, a senior fellow for the Ethics and Public Policy Center. He's previously worked in the White House with George W. Bush, worked on health care. Both sides claim this to be a victory. How can they do that?
Well, I think from the administration, they're trying to put the best face on this. I mean, really, the decision allows the Little Sisters to continue on without being fined, without having to comply with this for the time being. And that means that it's going to be decided more at the lower courts. I think there was a possibility, if the court had decided the case and not put it back to the lower courts, that the Little Sisters could have lost and some of the lower court decisions have been upheld. That's not the case, and so the Little Sisters came out ahead.
So we assume it was a 4-4 vote. Obviously, Justice Scalia's death making the difference here.
It's a big deal, yeah. With only 8 justices, you're going to get a few cases like that, including this one.
So what happens next?
Well, the legal wrangling will go back to the lower court levels. They will continue fighting over what would constitute a least restrictive way for the Little Sisters to not offer these products to their employees directly through insurance, but then the government still being allowed to do something to provide access to the workers. How that is done is the subject of a lot of dispute.
Jim, why do you call the contraceptive mandate a political symbol for the administration?
Well, there was never a real national crisis requiring a national solution, requiring every employer in the country to do this. Most people in America already had plenty of access to contraceptives. There was already programs in place to subsidize low-income people. We really didn't need a national regulatory requirement on everybody to do this. The administration pursued it because it knew some people would object, and therefore they could have a political issue on which to campaign.
As a healthcare expert, do you see contraception as a healthcare issue?
Not really, no. I mean, this is really a matter of personal choice, obviously. And as I indicated already, most people already have access to this through their own resources. We didn't need to have this put into a requirement that every insurance plan in the country do this. Most insurance plans already did it. Now what they're doing is just trying to force people that are reluctant into complying with the government's point of view.
James Capretta with Ethics and Public Policy Center. Thanks so much for joining us, James.
Thank you, Brian.
And other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. House Republicans tackle the Zika virus but fall far short of what the White House wants. Jason Calvi reports from the Capitol tonight. Jason?
Brian, the president asked Congress for $1.9 billion 3 months ago. The House plan unveiled today would give him $622 million. That's 1/3 of what he's asking.
Republicans say the president padded his request with things like Medicaid funding for Puerto Rico. Democrats say Republicans have been dragging their feet for months. The Zika virus can cause fever, rash, and joint pain in adults. It can cause serious birth defects for babies in the womb. Zika is commonly spread by mosquitoes and can be spread sexually, too. There have been 500 cases in the U.S., all linked with overseas travel. There's no vaccine or medical treatment.
The new House bill will be voted on this week. It would provide money for researching a Zika vaccine and also would fight the mosquitoes that carry it. The Senate will be voting tomorrow on several proposals, including a bipartisan compromise that would total up to $1.1 billion. Brian?
Jason Calvi at the U.S. Capitol. Thank you, Jason. The House prepares to vote tonight on an international religious freedom bill. It requires all State Department diplomats to undergo new training. The goal is to ensure religious liberty is integrated into the overall diplomacy of the United States. That bill places the Office on International Religious Freedom directly with the Secretary of State. It also directs the President to appoint a special advisor on religious freedom to the National Security Council. U.S. Catholic bishops say the federal government's guidance that treats a student's gender identity as the student's sex is deeply disturbing. A U.S. CCB statement reads in part, "The Catholic Church consistently affirms the inherent dignity of each and every human person." The statement goes on to say that children should always be and feel safe and secure and know they are loved. It continues, "The guidance contradicts a basic understanding of human formation so well expressed by Pope Francis, that the young need to be helped to accept their own body as it was created." 13 police officers are honored at the White House with the Medal of Valor for heroism. The president said the officers exhibited exceptional courage, regardless of their personal safety, all in an attempt to save or protect lives. Among those honored, 3 from California who thwarted a terrorist plot, and others who intervened in hostage situations and an armed robbery.
Each of them will tell you, very humbly, the same thing. They were just doing their jobs. They were doing what they had to do, what they were trained to do, like on any other day.
One officer was awarded the medal posthumously. Philadelphia Sergeant Robert Wilson III was killed during an armed robbery protecting grocery store customers and employees. Conservative leaders plan to meet this week with Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg. They'll discuss allegations the social media company's trending topics section is suppressing conservative issues. Radio host Glenn Beck and American Enterprise Institute President Arthur Brooks, who has been a guest on our show, are among those meeting with Zuckerberg on Wednesday. Facebook says it's investigating claims and is working to make sure its platform stays as open as possible. Donald Trump claims that he will prevail against what he calls a media witch hunt. A New York Times article reportedly describes Trump's dealings with women. A former Miss Utah said Trump introduced himself by kissing her on the lips, but one woman interviewed for the story accuses the newspaper of twisting her words.
I have never seen him treat women anything other than respectfully.
Roanne Brewer-Lane says she supports Trump for president. Notre Dame's president responds to criticism over the university honoring Vice President Joe Biden. Father John Jenkins acknowledged that many people have grave moral reservations about the vice president's political positions. Father Jenkins says we cannot turn a blind eye to such reservations, but he praised Biden and former House Speaker John Boehner, who was also honored for serving the common good.
Governing, in my view, is the art of the possible.
Where progress only comes when you deal with your opponent with respect, listening as well as talking.
The vice president called Notre Dame's Laetare Medal the most meaningful award I have ever received in my life. But a Catholic education watchdog group is critical. The Cardinal Newman Society says Notre Dame giving Biden a Laetare Award betrays the university's Catholic mission.
Fundamentally, it sends a message of confusion to everyone about what a good Catholic is. Someone who very publicly opposes the church on fundamental issues like abortion and same-sex marriage is not someone that Catholic institutions should be holding up for honor.
Patrick Riley notes that Notre Dame invited pro-abortion President Barack Obama to deliver the commencement address a few years ago. The Diocese of Albany sues New York State insurance regulators over requirements that employee health plans cover abortions. In a recent column for the diocesan newspaper, Bishop Edward Scharfenberger writes, "What is objectionable in the mandate is not only that they force us to fund and participate in actions that are gravely immoral, but also that they were enforced under color of law without our knowledge and in clear violation of the law." Joining us is Mary DeTurris Poust, Communications Director for the Diocese of Albany. She is joining us by Skype. Mary, how is it that health insurers didn't notify the diocese over this mandate?
Well, that's what this litigation, I think, is going to find out, because it's a little unbelievable for most people when they realize that a state agency, the Department of Financial Services, was able to basically do an end run around the Constitution and without any legislative or regulatory process, insert into the model language that is mandated on all insurance companies the requirement to provide abortions. And so that is in our current health insurance policy covers abortion at this point.
Are you encouraged at all by today's Supreme Court decision in the Little Sisters of the Poor case? Do you expect that to impact your case at all?
I guess at this point, it's still a little ambiguous. They're throwing it back to the lower court, but yet I think it's encouraging in that we feel they're very different fact sets, but we feel we have even stronger grounds in our lawsuit because of the way this is all handled. So we feel encouraged in the sense that we think we're hopeful then that ours has got a good grounds here.
How would you say this insurance mandate threatens religious freedom?
I think that we're being joined. It's not only a Catholic complaint. We're being joined by Baptists, Lutherans, Episcopals, non-religious. So we keep trying to remind people that this is not strictly a Catholic issue. This is an issue for anyone who values their religious freedom, their religious liberty, and their constitutional protections. Because if they can do this, whether you agree with us on abortion or not, if they can do this to us, they can do it to anyone, which is to basically go completely against our right to religious freedom and to not have to do something we consider so morally grave evil. and we're being forced to provide this. We have no way of knowing if we've actually been complicit in this at this point. So I think people really need to wake up to what's happening.
Does it seem like a deliberate effort to impose this on people of faith?
I think we could probably say there's a reason why none of us knew about it and why it was not disclosed to us that it was happening, and we sort of found out by some of this by accident. So I think we probably have to look at that and say something was afoot there.
Mary DeTurris Poust Skyping with us from the Diocese of Albany. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Coming up, the president-elect of the Philippines says he'll reinstate the death penalty, and celebrating the UK's Queen with a royal birthday party. Come, Holy Spirit, come, and from your celestial home shed a ray of light divine. From the prayer Veni Sancta Spiritus, the Pentecost sequence. Thanks for joining us on this Monday evening. I'm Brian Patrick. The president-elect of the Philippines plans to restore the death penalty.
What I would do is to urge Congress to restore the death penalty by hanging.
Rodrigo Duterte says the death penalty could be used in murder cases involving rape, kidnapping, robbery, or illegal guns. The president-elect also says he will launch a major offensive to destroy Abu Sayyaf's extremists in the southern Philippines, even if it means trampling on their human rights. Well, the U.S. envoy in the fight against ISIS says the tide is turning in the ideological battle against the Islamic State terrorists. Brett McGurk says ISIS is losing territory. Also tonight, the U.S. and other world powers say they will now supply Libya with weapons to fight ISIS and other militant groups. Churches near a Christian holy site along the Jordan River have been empty for 50 years, but that's about to change. The signs warn of danger in 3 languages. Only the road is safe. Beyond the barbed wire, nearly 5,000 explosive mines cover 1 square kilometer.
In this particular area, we're not looking to find an anti-personnel mine.
And you can see an anti-tank mine right now?
Yeah, sure. There is the first line is right here, like 30 meters from the place where we're standing.
This minefield in the West Bank restricts access to one of Christianity's holiest sites, recognized as the biblical site of the baptism of Jesus. Pilgrims from all over the world bathe in the waters of the Jordan River at a modern tourist center opened in 2011. But 7 Christian churches at the site, all different denominations, have been closed for half a century. During the Six-Day War in 1967, Israeli and Jordanian armies laid mines here. Churches were booby-trapped, and unexploded ordnance could still be anywhere. The churches have been off limits ever since.
And if we didn't do it, these mines would stay here forever.
James Cowan is the CEO of HALO, the world's largest humanitarian mine clearing organization. HALO just received permission to clear the minefield with the approval of both the Israelis and Palestinians. He says the mines are still dangerous.
They would still be dangerous 100 years from now if we didn't clear them.
In Syria and Iraq, ISIS has leveled ancient holy sites, bulldozing history and destroying precious artifacts. Here, the goal is to do the reverse. Clearing the minefield preserves those holy sites so pilgrims and tourists can visit once again. And work on a new subway line in Rome runs into ancient ruins again. This time, it's the barracks of Roman guards. The frescoed walls and mosaics date back to the 2nd century AD. Officials say they hope to incorporate the archaeological discovery into the new metro station so commuters can enjoy it. Queen Elizabeth II's 90th birthday is marked Sunday with spectacular performances at Windsor Castle. Prince Charles greeting his mother as she arrived. They were joined in the royal box by her grandsons, Princes William and Harry. The Queen's passion for horses was evident with several horse-themed performances. Queen Elizabeth turned 90 April 21st. She is Britain's longest-serving monarch. Up next, the Supreme Court disappoints some parishioners, why they'll finally have to let go of the church building they've been occupying. And this shower of rose petals in Rome symbolizes the descent of the Holy Spirit. On On this May 16th, a Monday evening, thanks for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick. Well, parishioners at a Massachusetts church must leave the building after the Supreme Court rejects their appeal. This ends a decade-long dispute. St. Francis Xavier Cabrini parishioners tried to block the Boston Archdiocese from closing their church. They occupied the building. When the parishioners wouldn't leave, the Archdiocese filed a civil trespass case. A judge ordered the eviction, and today's Supreme Court order upholds that decision. The parishioners have said they would leave within 14 days of a Supreme Court order. Pope Francis calls on priests to lead a simple life, keeping only the possessions that increase their faith and charity. Opening the annual Italian Bishops' Conference, the Holy Father said priests must stand apart from the common man. They should discard ambitions for a career and power in order to serve others. He also encouraged the bishops to listen to their priests who dedicate themselves to their communities. The president of Bulgaria meets Pope Francis in a private audience at the Apostolic Palace today. The Vatican did not release details of what they talked about. As with other heads of state, the Bulgarian leader and the Holy Father exchanged gifts. Well, some Catholics are looking to health-sharing ministries as an alternative to Obamacare. We have Louis Brown with us, the director of CMF Curo. Louis, what is CMF Curo and what sets it apart from other health-sharing ministries?
Sure. Thank you, Brian, for the opportunity. CMF Curo is a Catholic healthcare ministry and the first of its kind in the country that provides a Catholic healthcare option. It really empowers Catholics to do healthcare sharing, which is a system, a situation in which, a culture in which Christians share their medical costs instead of doing insurance. It's really an opportunity for Catholics across the country to save tremendous amounts of money on their healthcare costs while also living church teaching when it comes to solidarity and living in community with each other.
So are they exempt from Obamacare?
They are. There's a specific exemption within the Affordable Care Act that says that if you join an existing healthcare sharing ministry that existed as of December 31st, 1999, you are deemed exempt from the Affordable Care Act. Therefore, you do not have to pay the fines that are associated with the individual mandate. We partnered with Samaritan Ministries International that existed at the time, and that empowers us to do what we're doing with the ministry.
So how might Catholics find this to be a viable solution to their health care?
I think in a number of ways. First, it's a lot less expensive than private traditional insurance. So if someone's an independent contractor, they own their own business, or in some form or fashion they're not provided employer-sponsored insurance, it's much less expensive, a lot more affordable. In addition to that, it really empowers Catholics in all parts of the country to live their faith in their health care, to live in community, to walk with your brothers and sisters in the Lord across the country. It's a beautiful witness to the new evangelization in healthcare, which is the mission and the movement that we're trying to advance around the country.
I find it interesting that participants are generally healthier because there's some requirements, aren't there?
There are. Essentially, the way that we would understand it is that our members of the CMF Curo ministry must live in a state of grace, as we are called to do as practicing Catholics authentically. But in doing that and calling upon that, we're also asking our members to be stewards of their own health and stewards of the health of the community, where members are month to month paying for each other's medical costs and really taking an active ownership both of my own health, but also the health of my brothers and sisters in the Lord.
It's a beautiful concept. Where can we find out more?
You can go to cmfcuro.com.
Thank you. Louis Brown, we appreciate you and CMF Curo.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for joining us. For the EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Brian Patrick. Tonight we leave you at Rome's Pantheon. A cascade of rose petals falls at the end of Mass on Pentecost, representing the Holy Spirit in the form of tongues of fire. Come, Holy Spirit.